Hello, welcome to the Friday seminar. My name is Miguel Figliozzi. I'm a civil engineering faculty, and I'm part of organizing the Friday seminar for this term, and I'm also speaking today, so I'll have both jobs. And as part of being part of the seminar this term, I'll pass the assistantship, so make sure you signed in. Thank you. So today, we're going to be talking about somewhat new and innovative and different project, developing a smartphone app to crowdsource bicycle data for Oregon. So before I start, I want to recognize the work of the team that is working on this, because it has been a lot of work, and we have students from civil engineering, like Brian Blank, he's here. Great resource, outstanding researcher working on the project. We have two members of the team from computer science, Robin Mary and Bikram Maharjan. And we had other people from my research group, my lab, and other transportation students that have been very helpful for the project. So just to recognize that I'm speaking, but this is the teamwork, and has been a lot of hours behind this. So a little bit about why a smartphone app. So one of the first things that should come to mind is it's extremely hard to get high quality bicycle data. So it's very hard to know bicycle routes, where people go, why do people choose to use those routes. Also, it's very hard to get demographic info associated with the kind of routes people are riding, or even the type of bicycle, and many other kind of very useful information that transportation planners would like to know. So trying to do this using like a typical survey, it's really, really expensive. So a smartphone has this great thing that is obviously can get your GPS data, and then we can keep track of your route. And the phones are really good lately, and so we get very good high accuracy in terms of the path that the cyclists have used. And also we get a lot of other information that we can control in terms of user profile, what kind of cyclist. We get control over the questions. We get also high quality in terms of being able to get specific answers for specific questions. So in terms of cost per record, once you develop the app, it gets very good. Again, the other thing that is very good is that you get this kind of reveal preferences. It's not a survey where you're just stating what you would like to do. And also, it has the potential to get panel data. So if some people start using the app in November, and then we do another data collection a year later, and a year later, it's a very useful way to see how people's routes and choices be different over time. So the project goals, and when I think I submitted this idea to ODOT 4 or 5 times until it got accepted. So maybe it was too early when I started thinking about this. But the idea was, in terms of ODOT, was also not just interested in cyclists, just routes, but also thinking about the infrastructure side in terms of what kind of level of service, what kind of traffic stress bicyclists experience when they are using ODOT facilities and any other facility. So we really wanted to get more into know more about the cyclists, who they are, and what kind of cyclist profile they have. Are they mostly weekend users, or they are mostly commuters, and so on? And something that was particularly very, very appealing to me was this issue in terms of trying to get into safety and then trying to crowdsource safety data in terms of what do users think in terms of maybe some safety issues, and also report crashes or near misses that they might have had. That's something that is not available currently. And again, some of the long-term goals is, besides all the typical route choice models and so on, also trying to look at bicycle level of traffic stress, try to get enough data to get models to calibrate that. Because ODOT has adopted a level of traffic stress category for their own evaluation projects when it regards to bicycles. So something that, again, I have to highlight is Oregon DOT is the first state in the US to really be behind this. There have been cities or counties trying to use apps, but in terms of like a state DOT, it has been quite a step forward and innovative in terms of supporting this. So my acknowledgement to Oregon DOT. And I also have to say that here in Oregon, Lane County adopted a version of one app developed in San Francisco called Cycle Tracks, and they have been using that. So some context. And just to give you an idea, if you're familiar with some of these recreational apps like Map My Ride, Strava, around 2009, 2010, that's when they started to be more widespread. And then on top, if you see here, we have this kind of timeline, but here we have some kind of more like, there have been some apps developed by cities or counties to get infrastructure or problems, like say if there is a pothole, you can report it to the city. So this started, maybe Boston was the first one or one of the first, and then we had here in Portland, PDX Reporter, where you can, send information about some problem related to pivot facilities, and then you can upload a picture and some comments. So Eugene did something similar, but just related to bikes. And very early on, Cycle Tracks was developed in San Francisco by San Francisco County Transportation Authority, and it was mainly geared towards getting GPS route data and some socio-demographic data from users. And then there have been other deployments in Atlanta, Montreal, and many other cities that they have kind of adopted Cycle Tracks or modified the original app. So we come right here towards the end of the graph. So we started the project almost a year ago, and it took all the development over kind of 10 months until we got ready to launch the first pilot in November. So that's the symbol for Oregon Cycle, ORcycle, and we are kind of towards the end. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we decided to develop a new app. So why a new app? There have been already many other apps. Well, what is different about our app is that it really has a different emphasis. It's just not just about routes, but we're also very focused on safety and infrastructure issues related to bicycles. So very geared towards the safety aspect that we think has been neglected in the other apps. So we developed new questionnaires for everything for the users because we wanted to get more in-depth info about the cyclist types, not just socio-demographics, but also what kind of cyclist was using the app. Could be like, like hardcore or more commuter or more like recreational weekend rider. So we wanted to get more into what type of cyclist was the one using the app. So we also added answers with multiple choices or selections. So previous apps, you were able just to choose one option. So we added, like say, if you select a route, you could say that you're choosing that route because it's direct and it also has a nice environment and because it has nice bike facilities. So we allow for multiple options in terms of when people answer. So we added new trip purposes and route characteristics, and then we added things like reminders and tutorials and added links to maps. So we are mapping actually the safety reports that we get from people. And I'm going to show you that in 10, 15 minutes. So the app has 4 basic parts. If you think about it, one is, and I'm going to show a couple of screenshots. It's either you can record trips, you can report safety things, either safety issues or crashes or near misses you had experienced. Then we collect user data, and then we have links to maps and to other websites where you can do official reports to ODOT or other jurisdictions. So I'm going to kind of walk you through a little bit about the development of the app and the process to get this app ready. So conceptual ideas and features. Believe it or not, at the beginning, everybody has a lot of ideas, a lot of features that you want to add. And if you have to code and program in 10 months and get the product, you have to start being selective in terms of, say, well, what is actually doable, what is kind of priority, and that kind of prioritization, it takes a lot of thinking. And so there was a lot of thinking and planning initially in terms of what we really wanted to get from the app. And like I said, one of the safety aspects was one of the most important ones. Obviously, then, after you get this kind of conceptual map in terms of what you want, it comes the actual coding, and just to give you an idea, it's not just one language. Unfortunately, you have Android, you have iOS, and thanks God we didn't have to do for Windows or, all the other companies that are disappearing now. So it's not just the app, but also you have to also think about coding for the backend, for the kind of the servers that are going to be storing and collecting the data. Yeah. So that's kind of involved. And obviously, then you start having all these kind of feedback loops in terms of when you start having testing versions, and testing is not just in terms of code, but also what it takes a lot of time is we give the app to people that want to test the app, make sure that it works on all kind of circumstances, make sure that the language, then the questions, then the menus make sense. So there is a lot of iterations in terms of going back and forth between testing feedback from the users and then coding. So like I said, that was the kind of pilot testing. So we did some extensive pilot testing because we did a big overhaul of all the questions and answers. So we had to test all the questions, if people were really understanding what we were asking, and if the questions, the options in terms of answers, if they were relevant to them. So that took considerable amount of time, the questionnaire, and like I said, a lot of feedbacks, many iterations. And then we also had to start kind of, plotting the routes, getting all the data, making sure that we were collecting data with the quality and the precision that we wanted. So that also requires some adjustments and some iterations. And then something that is related is like, well, people want to know more about the project, so then you have to develop a website so people can go and read about the privacy policy, about why we're collecting the data, and so on. So it's another thing that you need to add onto the kind of the burden of developing one of these apps. So we got to a point towards the end of October, September, where we kind of had the app, we tested, we got feedback from the pilot. So now, how do we reach users? So, and this was, the timing was November, so when it really started to get cold and people don't bike. So in terms of timing was not good. But we did an email campaign. So the people in the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee from ODOT, really helped to email as many organizations and groups and people they knew. And so that was, you know, not very, we didn't spend $1 in terms of paying for advertisement or anything like that. So this was really meant to be a pilot. So it was not, the goal was not to reach everybody, but was just to have a pilot to get some feedback, get some data, and see how it looks. So that was the idea. So we developed a flyer, and this took a long time too, just to develop, to make it nice, to choose pictures so people feel represented, that we don't want just professional riders, just, you know, like hardcore cyclists, but we want all kind of ages, all kind of people, families, commuters, everybody to participate. So we wanted to make it as inclusive as possible. And also, you know, provide feedback about your routes, infrastructure, and crashes, accidents. So we emphasize that we want all kind of data, not just, you know, your trip, like in most other apps, because that was one of the perceptions, like it was hard to sometimes convey. So people are used to Strava or these apps where they do a start trip, end trip, and that's it. But in our case, we also want the safety aspect. We want information about crashes, about locations where there could be a dangerous right turn, or there is no bike lane, and so on. So it's, you know, I think people's perception sometimes is geared towards just recording the start and end of the trip, and some people don't realize that we have the potential with the app to collect all kinds of other very useful information. So this was kind of the flyer we used to promote the app. So after the pilot, so November, December, like I said, the worst months in terms of weather and being very cold. But we received a, you know, high number of users. Like I said, without trying super hard, we have over 300 people that downloaded the app. Of those, over almost 200 that actually recorded trips and safety issues and so on. So the other thing about reaching out is like people then start emailing you and asking questions about the app and having problems to say, well, I was in a tunnel and my trip didn't log. I say, well, you're in a tunnel, so you have to respond, say, well, there is no GPS signal, so there is not a problem with the app. It's just, you know. But in terms of explaining things to the public, you know, sometimes people don't know how the smartphone app works. So it's kind of legit, like, you know, they spend time to ask you questions and provide feedback. So we got all kinds of sometimes very useful feedback in terms of even coding things or functions we could use from some programmer. So that was nice that some people really were actually very nice. And we always got very nice comments and very good feedback. So overall, everybody went from super technical people that really trying to help out and even suggesting some coding functions that we could use, to some people that in the spectrum of not very technical and just asking kind of the basic questions about how to use the app. But I mean, you expect that because, you know, there is a wide, diverse population, and actually that's what we want to capture, not just people that are, you know, super technical and high tech, that just everyone, you know, should be using the app. So it was good to get, in a way, that range of questions, because it kind of shows that people that are not really too savvy with technology were trying to use the app. So that was a good sign. So you have to look at the glass half full, because that means that, you know, like I said, it's good that the people that, you know, everybody was trying to use the app. So obviously, from some of that feedback, we had to update the website, include more, you know, questions and answers. And after, you know, collecting the data in November, December, was long time also spending with kind of trying to validate the data we have collected and doing some cleaning. Cleaning because during the pilot testing, we did a lot of not fake trips, but we were also testing the app. A lot of people in the transportation lab were also testing the app, so we had to remove those trips and those reports. And then we have to look at, validating the data, especially with the reports saying, well, what people say, there is an intersection here, it really makes sense that when you go to the GPS location, there is an intersection and it looks like, it's dangerous and so on. And the good thing is after, cleaning and validating that overall, very, very high level of, people really submitting good data. We didn't see anything that looked like was, bad data, or people just sending things that didn't make sense. So that was very good to know. You never know when you launch an app to the general public what you're going to get. So it was nice to see that level of engagement. And then, after that, we started also mapping results, and I'm going to show you some maps in a little bit. And the data analysis that is ongoing. So I can show you some graphs, but we have a lot of data, so we're still digesting and processing the data we have. And we have also a new version coming out maybe in 2 or 3 days. So if you downloaded the app, you will get the new version maybe in 2 or 3 days, or maybe this is the best time to download the app because it's going to have a new and improved version. So just going to go through some of the things that we added in the new version. Is a tutorial, so people can see what are all the features. So when you open the app, you have this kind of initial map, and actually this is background is PSU. And in the tutorial, well, you have to start trip, and then after your trip, there are a set of questions that you answer about the purpose of your trip, how frequently you use the trip, route choice factors, the comfort level, and we added this that was not in previous apps because, again, one of the ideas with the app is kind of to develop models to say, well, how comfortable people are in different type of routes depending on, background and type of rider and type of facilities they are using. And then we have the option to also, they could choose if there were any sources of safety concerns, like, the auto traffic, buses, commercial vehicles, and so on. So they had also the option to associate with the trip safety issues. So this is referring to the last item, something that we added that is not in the previous apps. So we have here, like, for 618 trips that we received that, after cleaning, validating, and so on. And you see how, auto traffic tends to be percentage-wise, like, over 50%, the main concern for most users, most trips. But then, in a second group, you have parked vehicles. So parked vehicles seems to be a big issue. Second biggest issue with large commercial vehicles like trucks, and then after that, public transportation. And it's interesting to see that even pedestrians and other cyclists, they are like at 15% of the concern. So in this case, users could do multiple choice. So they could select more than one kind of route stressor. So we have, graphs for all the questions, but again, just to keep it, within 45 minutes. I don't have time to go over all of them. I'm just showing you this one. So the other thing that you can do with the app is to go here and report. So once you click here, you will go to answer a couple of questions, and if you have to report a crash or near miss, you can report, how severe it was, the object. Basically, did you crash against a vehicle or a pedestrian or a pole? The actions that led to the event, what contributed to the event. So it could be, sir, no light or poor lighting or bad pavement condition. And then the date and any additional comment. And actually, we're surprised. The additional comments I'll show you later, some people really went into great lengths to explain some of the safety problems and crashes they had. So it was surprising to see this. And then questions about safety reports, how urgent it is, the type of problem. I'm going to show you graphs so you get an idea about that, the date, and additional comments. So then there is another menu here at the bottom where you can review your trips. You get the purpose, the duration, when it took place, the distance traveled, the average speed. And if you click on each one, then you will see a map with the trip that you did. And then in the under version, you can go back to one of your trips and mark along the trip any location where you had a safety problem or where you think there could be a potential crash or any safety issue. So you can go back to your trips to kind of mark where you think there is a problem. And then, at the end, you can go and look at all your reports. And we did kind of this color and shape coded. So we did stars for safety issues, and we did triangles with this kind of terrifying symbols saying, well, there is a crash or near miss in this location. And then you can, you have the color code red for 5, that is the worst, to green, that is level 1. So we color coded this. And then, you can go to look at the review the reports. When you click on them, you can get and see the location too. So some of the data we gather, and again, this is 124 safety reports. And you see locations, people reported locations with high traffic volume and high traffic speed. So related again with vehicles tend to be the most kind of frequent kind of issues that people are reporting. No bike lane or shoulder, third. And then you have the second group, right turning lanes or narrow bike lane. So fairly related to infrastructure or high traffic conditions. Tends to be the most popular ones. Buses, truck traffic, and so on, in this case, they are not as frequent as we saw with the trips. And then in terms of the crash reports, I'm just showing one here related to the vehicle or object related to the event. And a small, medium cars, almost 40%. Then we had large SUVs, large vehicles, SUVs. Another bicycle, it was kind of, almost third in terms of crashing to another bicycle. So obviously these are crashes that are unreported in the official statistics because you have to have a very severe crash to be reported to the officially. So kind of surprising, but this is what you get when you ask these kind of questions. So actions related to the events, and in this case, we had kind of what happened, like cyclists lost control of the bike. It seems like in no instance anyone had lost control. So, but usually it's right turning vehicle and the driver did not stop. So you see almost, getting close to 30%. And then, you have second to that group, cyclist does not stop, vehicle change lane or direction of travel, and left turning vehicles. So turns are, usually vehicles getting into the bike lane or vehicles turning is one of the major issues related to crashes. So we added other features like to, a reminder, so you can set a reminder in your app. So like say if you go commute every morning at 8 and then go back at 4, you could set reminders, say, remind me at 7:50 and 3:50 to turn on the app to record a trip. And then we added links to the maps that we are creating with all the data that people are sending us. So we thought that this was important because, we want to give back to people. People are nice spending time to send us the data. We want to provide the data back to them obviously in an aggregated level to protect privacy, but we want to, again, working hard on developing maps. And then we also added report to transportation agencies because, we got also this kind of feedback from ODOT that they didn't want to see that users see the app just as one way of reporting, and they stopped reporting using the phone lines, because obviously using the phone line and calling the agency that has jurisdiction is the fastest way to kind of get a response. So this data eventually goes to ODOT and to other agencies, but the best way to do it is obviously to still use the phone line to call the agency. So we added this so that, obviously users have an easy way to get access to the phones and information that is necessary to report to the agencies. And I can now go and show you some of the maps. Let me see. So this is our website for the app. You're welcome to go there. It has instructions for Android, iOS, our privacy policy, and this kind of what I mentioned about reporting road hazards and the development team. But what I want to show you is this is the map that we have reporting, in this case, safety issues. And if you go in here, it's kind of interactive. And obviously, we have most of the reports are in the Multnomah County, City of Portland kind of jurisdiction. And then you can turn it on and off in terms of safety reports or crash and near miss data. So again, we try to color code with black being the worst, like major injuries, level 5, and urgent in terms of safety, and then level 1 being this blue color. And then if you click on each of these ones, so for example, on here, we get the report about a cyclist that had major injuries, and as you see here in the comments, cyclist saying that erase memory of crash, no witness circumstances point to hit and run. So we get the exact location, and then we can later go with Google Maps and Street View and see exactly the location where this took place. And then we also display here all this other information about the severity, the description, required hospitalization, the type of vehicle, the actions. In this case, the driver did not stop, and the cause his vehicle did not yield, careless driving, or higher vehicle speed. So, and if you click on, like I said, on some of the different infrastructure, issues, you can get, some people provide more or less information, but then, you can, these maps are available now to the public, so anyone can go and see the type of information that is being reported. So the other thing that I want to show here is that in terms of where people are sending routes and trips, here the red kind of represents, around the Portland metropolitan region, but there also you see that there is some in Salem, Corvallis, Eugene, some here in between Medford, Ashland, and some here along the coast. And we also have people outside the state that are using the app. I'm not showing, because obviously ODOT pay us to just show things that go on in the, and this is to give you an idea, the kind of covering most of the routes and, what's going on in Portland. Going back to, so I show you the maps, and I want to still show you a little bit more about some of the comments. So one of the things about the value, I think, of people, there is, I think, before having this app, there is no way people can comment and submit this type of information. So some people like say, well, drivers use the bike lane as the right-hand turn lane before entering the highway during the morning rush hour. Makes it very dangerous for cyclists to pass. They're either dodging traffic last minute or ducking out in the lane with angry reactions. So the nice thing is, given the location, we can go and now, see exactly in the map Southwest Wheeler Boulevard, and then, we can go to Street View and get the screenshot in terms of we know exactly what the cyclist is talking about. So we are providing the GPS coordinates, so anyone, any transportation agency can go to the map and, get the data and also then go and check, very quickly without leaving your desk what's going on. So we got many, many comments. I'm just going to show you a couple just to give you a sample about the type of things that people are saying. Some people send us pictures, and they even spend the time to even write on top of the picture to put a comment. So in this case, this bike lane is configured in a very unsafe way. Cyclists are forced to merge left across high-speed traffic that is merging right. So, and if you see, this is close to Ashland. So this is the Crater Lake Highway, north of Medford. So close to the interchange. And you can then go to Street View, and then you can see what the cyclist is saying. So these are the vehicles coming here. This is the bike lane. And then if you see, there is this kind of here, vehicles are coming here, and then the bike lane is supposed to continue that way while vehicles are turning right. So that's what this person was trying to explain. And, I think it's the nice thing about getting the coordinates is then you can go and make sense of what people are talking about. A lot of things about right-turning problems and, people actually taking pictures. So obviously people are riding with cameras, and there are, they can go at the end of the day. They can go and take the picture of the time when someone cut them off, and they can submit that. Obviously, I kind of, here blur the license plate, but, this is one of the issues too in terms of, you need to kind of make sure that you need to screen, and everybody has been, nice in terms of the language they use and so on, but there is, we shouldn't be providing personal information because again, we cannot, this is data that people are sending about right turn problems in terms of vehicle invading the bike lane. So, like I said, yeah, so I think it's someone, wearing a camera in the helmet. So I'm saying that we have seen several, photographs like that. So people wearing, cameras. So they can then, at the end of the day, they can go back and kind of show. So, and we got very detailed reports saying vehicle license plate, Oregon, and the complete thing. So you can see it in the picture, and people also write it down in the comment. No. It's just, they don't have to do anything. It's one of those GoPros or, one of the cameras that people can use. But anyway, it kind of, obviously provides proof that there was someone really in front of them in the right turn. Then many things about, blocked bike lanes or path, like, vehicles just totally blocking, just parking on bike lanes, or just blocking, and then cyclists being forced to kind of merge with the traffic. So these kind of issues was also very common in terms of what people, reporting with pictures. So as you see, sometimes people just, blocking the lane with just debris or garbage. There were also kind of, infrastructure issues, like saying, well, pavement is really bad, like in this example, in this bike path, or, what happened here looks like after a storm or an accident, how, the rail is broken now. So all the pictures, I think, except for one that I think someone was just, I think, testing the app, were very useful or valid. So very, very high number of useful pictures. So before I go into questions, again, I want to emphasize that there was a lot of work behind this, and very thankful to the team of people working in my lab and with me in this project. Also, the ODOT technical committee has been very supportive and provided useful comments. And I think, now we did this small pilot, but I think it's kind of rewarding and nice to see that after all the work developing the app, you actually see that people see the value of using the app and providing this kind of feedback. But, was a steep learning curve, a lot of new things we have to think about, develop. So my advice, if you want to develop an app, think about it very carefully because it takes a lot of work and time. So it's doable, but I think it took 2 or 3 times more work and time than I had thought originally. So it's very interesting and gratifying, but it's very, very time-consuming. And I think it's, something to realize. I think public agencies should be using more these kind of tools we have now to collect information, like I said, in an accurate, inexpensive way, but then you have, if you're a transportation planner or thinking about dangerous locations or what people are experiencing, then you can go to the map, click and get feedback, read the comments, get to see the actual street view. So I think it's a very powerful combination where at the time, I think now where all these tools are coming together and can be very useful for future planning purposes. And next steps, we're still working on digesting the data and, working on the report and the things we have to do. So I think there is a lot of potential, but, we'll see what happens in the future. So if you want to know more about the project, go to the webpage for the app, or if you go to Google Play or the Apple App Store, just do ORcycle, and then you will go to the app, and then you get all the links. Or if you have any questions, just email us to our lab, and we'll be happy to provide feedback or address any comment you might have. And I think now it's time for questions. And since I'm moderating this session too, happy to go to questions. Yeah.
My question was, you had an option where you can report safety issues in the road.
Yeah.
And my question is if that gets taken care of, how does that get reported so it's not constantly on the app so people can plan now correctly accordingly?
So, like I said, so the map with all the reports, it's available. Like anyone can go to our website and just look at the map. It's an
How does that get removed from the app?
That's a good thing that you're asking that. We now have added a field where people have to report the date when you're reporting that or when you think that the problem took place. And then, it's one of these things that is ongoing work, and there is really no protocol to deal with that now in terms of how we should handle that. And I think it's something we need to discuss with ODOT in terms of how, these things should be uploaded or, not loaded into the map once they get fixed. But that's a very good question. Yeah.
In the same line of thought, is there any ideas of using the information to create or influence apps that are now used to present routes? So say I want to go from point A to B, but I don't know how to get there.
So, when I talk at the beginning about the features and so on, that was one idea at the beginning to provide that, but we thought that was not the main core of what we really wanted, because we wanted to focus more on safety and infrastructure, and we cannot compete with Google, So I think it's unrealistic for us to develop that because it's very challenging, and, people will use the apps that are better, So for that reason, we didn't include that. And we also included a feature to reduce user burden to say, well, if you repeat the same trip over and over, you just need to report it once, because then we also get an answer about the frequency. If you do it every day, just tell us once that you do it every day, and you don't have to do it again. So we want to minimize like user kind of time and burden, so people use the app only when they feel that it's necessary to record a new trip or to highlight there is a safety issue or they had a crash or something that is unreported. Yeah.
When someone starts a trip and then they stop moving for a while, does it shut off automatically, or does it prompt them like, oh, are you done?
So we actually, I didn't mention this, but we added kind of a beep sound that after not moving for 3 minutes, then you get a signal that say, I think it looks like you are not using your bicycle. So, and we did it actually if you have very low speed or if you're going too fast, because it might be that someone got on the bus or started using the car. So we kind of notify people that way, yeah. That was one of the things we were worried. I said, well, the data quality, how do we ensure that people will stop recording the trip? Because many people forget. We noticed that. Like we even were testing and then forget to stop the trip. But the good news is once you start the trip, then you can filter out because you realize that the speed is too high or too low. And then you know that that's not a bicycle anymore. Yeah, but that was part of the data quality in terms of we had to spend some time dealing with that. Yeah.
I'm curious about the agency response to the reporting. Like, has this put any action in ODOT or PDOT or any of the other agencies?
So ODOT, is very supportive, but this is a pilot project, so this is not supposed to be. This is just a test to see, one, that if we're able to develop the app, and then to get people feedback, and then how useful was the feedback, and now ODOT will have. It's in the process of thinking, well, how they can have a process to incorporate this in a regular basis, because obviously you will require someone, staff will have to take care of this and process, so this kind of opens the door to, we complain sometimes we don't have data, but then when we get data, you get on a continuous basis, you also have to have a process and people to deal with that. And that was not part of the project. The project was really to get it going. But in terms of how it continues, I think there is now conversations about what is the best way to do that. And I cannot answer, but maybe in a year we'll have the answer for that. Yeah.
I think it's great that the state agency and the university are able to come together to produce something so useful, a lot more useful than like Strava, because you've got the crash incidents and all that. I'm wondering, moving forward, if ODOT finds they like it and they want a lot more data, I'm wondering for encouraging users to use this more, if somehow there could be like a point system, or like you could be the mayor of a neighborhood, or like I know they've got these sort of check-in apps where people compete.
Yeah.
And in Washington, D.C., they had a pothole reporting app. Mm-hmm. And one person submitted like 10% of all the potholes in the city or something. Yeah. Like he just didn't really distort the data because he would only do one pothole each time. So.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice feature. And, the other people that are here in the travel surveys and so on, you want to provide incentives, but not so that you bias, the kind of people, using or becoming too competitive. So I think it's something to think about, but... Yeah, sure. And something else that now that you mentioned Strava, there were some people actually commenting and saying, well, thank you for having an app, and I don't want to give my data to Strava so that Strava can make money selling the information to ODOT, because, ODOT had a pilot project where they acquire, the right to use the Strava data, and they have to pay for that. So actually, we got feedback from some users saying, well, thank you, there is an option, like, I don't want to submit my information to Strava so they can make money out of my data. So I think it's interesting how, how different people perceive having like a non-profit, like university, gathering the data versus a private company that wants to, mine your data and then sell it or package it and, make a business out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, related to that, do you think you could use the data in Emergence with the Strava data that the city rolled out to like see more patterns?
Yeah, I mean, it's doable. But, I think there are very different data sets. Ours has a lot of depth in terms of cyclist profile and the type of cyclist you are and so on, more like from trying to get information useful to, to model and to understand what people prefer. And, Strava is a great app, but it's the market, and the kind of what they want to do is something else. They have other questions and other things. So, I think there will be some correlation, especially because we can filter out the people that tend to be, more into the profile, more into racing or frequent rider, like use it all the time, tend to be the kind of people that also use Strava. So, I think that with our data, we can filter out and then match it with that. But then if we get someone like says, well, I'm just using the app to go, shopping trips or social, recreational, like short trips, that kind of person is not using Strava because it's really not, the type of app for just small or regular or, everyday trips. Yeah.
I suppose that would harken back to perceived utility, and that would inform system utilization, Strava, gamifying and metricizing your body and your workout and stuff like that might be more self-referential. Like, I'm not so much concerned about the greater good in terms of improving bicycling in the region. I want to know how many miles I went and how many calories I burned. So that might be, in terms of perceived utilities, different spectrum of things maybe. So that goes to my question. I mean, you obviously made a conscious choice. You faced a situation where you want to reach users and create some kind of utility that then users would take on that app. What made you go for this more abstract notion of improving the transportation system of bicycling, rather than maybe some other features that might be more self-referential?
Well, there were two things. One, we wanted the kind of, there is no crash data, only fatalities and kind of really major crashes are reported. So you could have a location where you get a lot of near misses, and the idea, what I always wanted, I ride my bike too, and I say, well, do I need to wait until someone dies so people pay attention to this intersection, or that there is a problem? So that was the kind of motivation to say, well, how can we get this data to the people that can do something about it before something bad happens? And the other thing about, there are some apps that report calories and those things and CO2 you save. But I thought that was a bit of distracting, and honestly, I'm very a perfectionist, and I'm very accurate I want to be. And to really get into calories, you need to start asking about weight, body type, get a lot of more information. Like if you really want to give some good information about how many calories, or CO2, say, well, what type of vehicle you have, what would be your option in terms of what other mode you would use. And for me, personally, I don't think just providing a bad average or a regular average is good enough because I think our app is great, and I don't want to add things that are kind of not so accurate, to the app, because, unless people really show that desire to know that, no one provided feedback. I say, well, I would like to know how many calories I'm burning, because we had that kind of option, say, well, give us feedback, because if a lot of people are really asking for calories or CO2 emissions that you're saving, we'll be happy to try to do something, but we didn't get that kind of response. So in a way, was part of the pilot was to kind of know what people really want to get. And I think that when you see the responses and how some people spend time, writing the comments and providing very lengthy explanations, I think people have more a need to kind of express, I think what they feel in terms of there is a safety issue and they feel that they cannot, there is no place where they can submit a picture or make it available. I think that's more like something that is unmet demand compared to, now you have health bands and so many other options to, to do the calories or other things.
But I was also wondering if there was some kind of self-selection that happened because you phrased it in terms of this kind of altruistic notion of improving the system, that the people that maybe are more interested in this individual self-centered bits of information would not gravitate to, not that altruistic and self-centered type of things are mutually exclusive, but maybe in terms of perceived utility, it might affect who uses the system. Another quick comment, I thought it was really interesting that bike cars showed up as fairly prominent stressors, but then with the crashes, it was really just a minor component. So weird. People get stressed out by parked cars, but it rarely happens.
And, it could be something that makes you uncomfortable because, a small thing you can fall onto, onto the travel lane. And I think it's something we're exploring now with the data. And I just want to emphasize that we think that this is one more tool to get information. And, Strava is great, and I think it's good to get information for other kind of, the cyclists that tend to be more competitive or they are more into, long rides or more like into performance. And I think this is not, having this kind of app is not to say, well, you shouldn't have open sessions and feedback in neighborhoods and so on, because then you capture different part of, the population. So I think it's the way we see it, or I see it is like say, well, it's just one more tool in kind of all the weapons you can have in terms of trying to get data. But I don't see this the only answer, I think it should complement other efforts and not, because one of the things that is interesting too, that people that are sometimes young people that are tech savvy, they are more prone to use an app and not to answer, like hard copy survey. But the other way around, you might get, people that are older that are more comfortable answering a hard copy survey and not using an app. So I think this is, I shouldn't, I don't see it as the solution to everything. I just see that one more, tool that can give us some great information. And we try to design it in such a way that we know if there is a market of, segment of the population that we are not capturing, So that's the good thing in terms of how we design it, so we can say, well, maybe we need more highly competitive, long distance kind of cyclists in the sample, because we get that kind of data. Yeah.
GPS, like when you're talking about the speed thresholds and stuff, do
Yeah.
you guys look at using, if it's, and I don't know how possible it is, using the accelerometers to do things like especially with crash data, if it could, if there's some kind of particular accelerometer event and then it prompts like, hey, something happened? Are you okay?
Thank God no one was using the app and had a crash. But that was not high in the priority list. So we thought about that using extra like accelerometer, but the thing is not all the phones have the same quality of accelerometer. So I think it's maybe as the phones get all like more uniform in terms of the quality you get, because just think that there are some people that are using phones that are 5 years old that very different in terms of the kind of functions and the kind of things that you can use in terms of the sensors they have. So there have been a huge evolution in 5 years in terms of what phones can do. But in terms of the market, the distribution in the population, there is a wide range of, a lot of people still have very old phones. And that was one of the things, like some things too advanced. If we implement it, not everybody will be able to use it because the phone does not have that sensor or that capability. So maybe, it's something that as the technology evolves, something that can be added. Susan, yeah.
Just real quick, sorry if I missed this. Do you know the number of people that have downloaded the app?
So downloaded the app, a lot of people, but some people just download it and don't use it. So, actual people using it, inputting data, over 300. people, reporting more than one trip or report close to 200. So yeah, there are a lot of people that just check it out, and they don't report anything. So I think it's just officially it's time to close. So thank you so much, and see you next Friday.